What is up, y'all? Gideon here. I want to take a few minutes to talk about the recent blog post and Gear Tier 20 being a requirement for the next level of the Annihilation Raid 2. So we're trying to ascertain here, is it really optional or is it only optional in name only? Meaning, is it mandatory? Okay, so I know there's a lot of confusion perhaps in the community right now. We have some people that might be a little angry and upset. On the other hand, we have people that are excited, which is good. But I think there's just some pieces somewhere in the middle where people might be, right? Kind of like myself when I first read it. Did we really grasp all the points? Did I really understand what was going on? And so since I was kind of thinking about it, I figured, well, there's other people that might be thinking about it as well. So we should probably talk about it a little bit and at least just talk about what we know at this point. And then that'll help us to make a better educated guess as time goes on. And eventually the mode's going to come out and we're going to see and have an understanding of what's going on at that time, especially. All we want to do is just take a second here and look at the blog post briefly once again to just kind of really get a couple points in mind, right? So this is the next iteration of the Annihilation Raid. So there's an additional node, it says, that increases the nodes up to 9, right? Now, here's one of the main points. We've also converted 2 of the nodes into bonus nodes. Now, bonus kind of, I guess, is going to go hand in hand with that optional nodes. Okay, so we have 2 of those, and it says they require the latest teams at all difficulties. So this is partly, I think, where some of the debate and or confusion is coming in. It requires the latest teams at all difficulties, meaning that as you play through the nodes, when you get to number 6 and number 7, you must use Hellfire Club for number 7. You must use Insidious 6 with Shocker and Vulture for number 8. You must use those teams. It says with additional scaling gear requirements. Okay, so keyword scaling. I believe that means that the difficulty is going to move. I think this is still going to be part of the difficulty slider portion of the raid, because it says it's based on the difficulty up to, it doesn't just say Gear Tier 20, it says up to Gear Tier 20 on difficulty 9. Okay, so what that means to me is that for 7 and 8, you have to have, like it says, Hellfire Club and Insidious 6 with Shocker and Vulture. But you do not have to have them at Gear Tier 20. All right. They're also going to let you finish the raid if you don't have those characters at all. Right. We got to keep in mind people are coming into this game at various places at various times. And so it looks like this is kind of a sliding option because raids are something you have to do to get your gear overall. Right. This is part of the economy of the game. For the most part, it looks like it's just a check mark where we are in raids now. But it looks like if you want to go after 7 or 8, you have to have Hellfire for 7. You have to have Insidious 6, Shocker, and Vulture for 8. But you can bring that difficulty down. So if you are a newer-ish player and you just got these characters just the other day because you just started playing, you've been playing for a couple weeks, this is when you came into the game, and so you just sort of got these characters that you could do that portion. If you are an experienced player, if you've been playing since day one, and you're going to have these characters as strong as they possibly can be, there's option for you as well. I think that's what the information is trying to say. Well, even if you don't have those things, or if you're not interested in pursuing that, it says the bonus nodes are also optional. You can skip over them and head straight to the boss. Now, why would it do that? Again, people might be coming to the game at different times. People play the game for different reasons. So maybe if you're just for speed and efficiency, you just want to get through it, then you just sim through the first 6, you go after the boss and you call it a day. But maybe these 2 nodes are going to be a little more meaty. Maybe they're going to be a little more difficult. I don't know. I haven't seen it. But sometimes people have been calling for stronger content. So maybe those two nodes will have a little bit more of a bite to them, incentivizing you maybe to play it manually if that's what you want, to get some extra rewards. There will be some increased rewards. It says how much, I don't know. Again, raids are something that's meant to be done every day. So I wouldn't expect the rewards to be extreme. It should just be a little bit more in addition to what we're already getting, because we're doing raids every day. So these things are going back into the economy. We got to look at the economy as a whole. There's nothing that generally happens that's overwhelming. That's just, here's this thing that's really going to pump up your account, right? Sometimes you do get them in certain milestones. When I say that, I don't usually mean daily milestones. It's things like going through perhaps portions of the Professor X saga, right? You'll get chunks of things like Crimson Gear, right? That happened in the past in other endgame content like Dark Dimensions and such. So those type of things, yes, you would get a chunk, you would get a one-time bonus of a bunch of stuff, but that's usually not what happens when it comes to raids. So I think, again, that there will be that difficulty slider that's still attached. Okay. That's what I think. So before we start putting Gear Tier 20 into certain characters like Emma Frost, who people are saying, well, I don't know really if I want to do that, right? She's not the kind of character that benefits from the gear. So I don't know if I want to put those resources into a character like Emma, right? I get it. So let's talk for a minute about who might actually be going down that direction. Who would actually put the gear on those characters? Okay. To really, again, to highlight this, we want to just think about another couple points. Remember the blog post here when the Annihilation Raid first started, right? Again, it came out with the difficulty slider. And they were kind of insinuating during the strike spot that went along with this that difficulty 6 and difficulty 7 is where many alliances would end up. So it kind of depends on how much effort you had put into the game up to that point, how long you've been playing the game. And there's a bump there you see between purple ISO 5, or excuse me, blue ISO 5, right? So that's the maximum blue. And then that next level of purple 1. And that would be contingent probably on what else was going on in a game. Like, where was your alliance? What were you doing when it came to Battle World, right? That was one of the ways we get that purple. So it kind of has something to do with what people were already working on, what people are doing at the time. Obviously, endgame alliances, you're going to be going all the way down on that list, right? For endgame alliances, you're going to be at that difficulty 9. You got maxed out purple ISO. You're trying to get your characters maxed out. And that's where a lot of us are taking our characters to. But again, we just want to reiterate, one of the things that's going on here is that you still had that ability to choose. You still had that ability to slide the difficulty depending on the resources that you had already put into those characters, into those teams. So in this case, right at the end game, what we're talking about with Annihilation Raid 2, we're talking about 10 characters. 10 characters that somebody would put Gear Tier 20 on. Many of us are not going to do that. And so that's why there's a little bit of controversy. So in my opinion, yes, Gear Tier 20 is something that most of us are going for. But when it comes to this thing with the new Annihilation Raid, when it comes to Annihilation Raid 2, I think the Gear Tier 20, the people who are going to be doing that, long story short, are the people that are already doing that, right? There's people who, that's how they play the game. They're already, right? The top end players are at a point, they're so far past Professor X right now that they're just putting the gear tier on the newest characters and the newest teams anyway. Those characters and those teams are maxed out. They need another outlet. They need another path of progression. And I think that this information is mostly for them. Okay. So with that in mind, I do think that this is something that is optional and not mandatory. We can look at it to be optional in 3 different ways, right? Obviously, there's a difficulty selector. So depending on whether you have GearTier20 on stuff or not, you can change the different nodes to suit the characters that you have. So even if you were to go after that section, I think the gear tier selector still applies. So in that case, it would be optional. You could dial it down to gear tier 18, 19, if that's what you want to do, in my opinion. We'll have to see when it comes out, but I think that's how it's going to look. Second, it is optional in a sense that you can skip those nodes, right? You can skip the nodes and just go right to the boss. So if it's something that you're not even interested in dealing with, you can just skip it and go right to the boss. Number three, it's optional in a sense that we shouldn't be getting pressure from our alliance, right? Because since it's something that is a moving target, every member doesn't have to do it. We shouldn't feel, again, pressure to do this or be getting on our members to do this if we're not already, right? If the expectation already isn't to hit every node at the highest level, then this shouldn't enter into the discussion as part of the new expectation. Alliances are going to have to talk and decide whether they want to go after those nodes, because they might have something to do with points for the raid season. But I think that's a little bit of a different discussion. Before we get to that, though, let's talk a little bit about some of the things that we've seen in the community. Okay. So this is an older Reddit post. This is an older Reddit post, but I think it sums up how some people are feeling, right? This person says they were fed up with Scopely stinginess in Gear Tier 20 beasts. Now, again, this is 2 months ago. This is an older Reddit post, but it still sums up, I think, how people feel sometimes about this portion of the game. When this was written, Peace Porridge Cold, they said that it was been 4 months and they still don't have a Gear Tier 20 City Hero Squad to go into the race for X. At this rate, he says, it feels like I'm 2 months away from getting one. I haven't even started on Global or Cosmic. And it's not like I'm free to play, he says. He says, I give Scopely a genuinely stupid amount of money every month, but apparently not enough. Okay. So again, I'm a free-to-play person. I just yesterday got to, right, I'm in the Cosmic section, the Cosmic Hero section, the home run here for Professor X. Okay. That's where I'm at right now as a free-to-play player. I know other people are past me. So like Big Positive Geek, for example, he got his Professor X. Rage Gaming, he's got his Professor X. Both of those individuals are free-to-play players. They got theirs. And at the time, the individual here was frustrated because he didn't feel like he was getting enough pieces. So that economy, right now, it's still the end game for progression. So it's still a bottleneck. And as long as there's not another progression method, that's kind of how it's going to be. And because of that, a lot of people, especially if you're free to play, you're concerned about having to put that on 10 different characters, some of which are not going to help you in other parts of the game. Okay. And I get that. I understand that. That's why we see videos out there about character traps, team traps, stuff like that. And I think this kind of falls into that only if individuals rush in without taking a look at their other options first, or thinking about what might really be going on here, what's actually being said before we invest in those characters and things of that nature. So I would encourage caution, and I would encourage us to maybe slow down a little bit and just see if we can find out what is actually happening first. Okay. So who is this for? Okay. So again, I think the pain of this information is that this is not for everyone. Right. I think when we look at this, we're looking at something, we're like, man, I can't measure up to that. That's not how I play the game. I still don't have Professor X. I need to be putting my gear there. I think that's intentional. that this is not for everyone. I think that this is for spenders majority of the time. I don't want to say spenders only, but from in majority of cases, I want to say this is for that portion of the community. Okay. Why? Well, again, Marvel Strike Force, we got to think about there's this pendulum that's kind of swings around and they're trying to help different members of the community and make sure different uh, play styles of community are rewarded and are getting something out of the gameplay of Marvel Strike Force. So again, you have most of your end game, right? Your spending community already has Professor X. They don't have another chase. There's ties in a lot of the leaderboard options, for example, the raids, right? Because everybody can do pretty much everybody can do the same thing. Not everybody, but a big portion of the community can do the same thing. So I think what might be happening here is we're introducing these optional nodes that might contribute points to the leaderboard for the raid season and then cause separation between individuals who are going that extra step. It also will give them a little bit of resources kicked back into their end game economy. They don't really need necessarily, from my understanding, they don't really need more crimson gear, but obviously you're going to take that. That is going to help you in the long run, that you don't have to target and buy it. Because that's what a lot of individuals who are spenders of this variety that we're talking about, okay, not all spenders, but individuals that were able to get Professor X super early, right? They weren't waiting on the randomness necessarily of what popped up out of the orbs or what was going to show up in a store every day. They were also targeting and purchasing a certain amount of crimson gear that they could put on their characters so they had them ready when they got into the next sections, right? That's how people were able to do it in a couple of hours, couple of days, what have you. But by re-injecting maybe some of these rewards back into their economy, it shows a little bit of appreciation. And obviously, if you have a piece sitting there that you were going to purchase, but you already have it sitting in your account just from stacking up that you were going to use anyway, you're obviously going to take that and you're going to be happy that that happened. Okay. It gives back a little bit to that portion of the community. So I think that's what these bonus nodes, these optional nodes are. I think it's a nod, if you will, a thank you, a call out to that portion of the community. Because I don't hear a ton, right? I don't live in that community, so I don't hear a ton about it. But what I am hearing from time to time is those individuals are not feeling, we'll say, appreciated, right? They don't have a chase right now. There's the gap, right? Some of us are saying the gap's too big. The gap right now is definitely shrinking. And Marvel Strike Force does that from time to time. Spenders can get way out ahead, and then it kind of brings everything back and it kind of goes back and forth. Right now, things are a lot tighter. And people who aren't spending money can compete with the people that are the biggest spenders, and there's no gap. So I think this is meant to offer a little bit of incentive to put a little bit of a gap out there and just some friendly competition, perhaps between some of the bigger alliances, as far as, again, season rewards for raids, because people like competition. Not everybody, but people who want to engage in it, they want to engage in it. So what does that mean for the free to play player and perhaps the middle spender who's not really targeting all those things? Well, that probably means you stick with your Gear Tier 19. We'll have to look and see when it happens, but it probably means you stick with the Gear Tier 19 characters and you don't go up there, because it doesn't make any sense. I shouldn't say it doesn't make sense, but it doesn't make any sense to put Gear Tier 20 on Hellfire Club, Insidious 6, Chakra, and Vulture for that purpose, right? Just for that raid. If you want to do it for another reason, that's a different discussion. But it doesn't make sense to do it necessarily for that raid if you can't do all the characters in that team, correct? If you can't do all the characters in that team, then it doesn't really make any sense to do that. So you might as well just hang out at what our maximum level is right now. I get a character, I put the slider up to Gear Tier 19. That's where I go, and we'll see when it comes out. We'll see when it comes out. But I'm thinking, right, if I want to engage in that content, there will be content for me there. Okay. trying to think if I had any more points. I got my notes here. We had some questions. Okay, we had a couple questions that did come up, and we'll answer those real quick. One, do I need Gear Tier 20 to finish the Annihilation Raid? I believe the answer to that question is no. There will be some type of, well, I guess the long story short, the answer is no. It says that you can skip those nodes. It says that they're bonus nodes. So you do not need the Gear Tier 20 to finish that portion of the raid. Question 2, will I miss unique rewards if I skip out on that and I don't give them the Gear Tier 20? The answer to that question is yes, right? It's an upgrade in what you can do. There should be some rewards that come from that. If those points count towards the raid leaderboard, then those will be points that we would not get, at least at the same level as other people. So yes, we would miss rewards, but that's just par for the course. There's nothing wrong with that. That's how it exists right now, right? There's individuals who have smaller rosters who maybe are only good, they have one team, so they're dialing it down to difficulty 3 and 4. Those players are not going to get the same rewards as people who are playing at the end game who have all of the named teams. That's just normal. Someone might ask, well, which character should I upgrade first? Again, unless you're planning to go all in, right? Unless you're a person that this is just how you play the game, that those characters, right? Those characters would already be at that level. If this is how you traditionally play the game, then those characters will already be at that level. If they are not, if you're not a person who's going to be taking both teams or at least one team to Gear Tier 20, then the answer is simply don't do it, right? There's not a character to do first, second, or third. There's not really a priority unless you're using those characters for other game modes. And if you plan to do this as a whole later, maybe there's some priority there. But unless you're planning to do this for other game modes, then there's not really a priority, right? It's just do what you feel is right. Use the characters that you're using. Otherwise, if you're playing the game like me, I'm still in the hunt for Professor X, so I can't spare the gear to use on characters that I'm not going to be using in that section or other game modes. So hopefully that helped to clear some things out. If not, you can drop some comments. You can drop some questions here. You can drop them in the link below. I think ultimately at the end of the day, this is just another optional take, right? You do not have to bring these characters up to Gear Tier 20. Scopely is not making us bring these characters up to Gear Tier 20. If people are in an alliance or they're in a position that this is just how they play, that they're going to get rewarded for that. The rest of us, it's just going to be business as usual. And we'll see what other adjustments are made as time goes on. We'll have to see again when it comes out. Could there be purple ISO 4 and 5 in the leaderboard? I don't know. Maybe that'll be a draw if there is. Let me know what you think in the comments. Hopefully you enjoy the rest of your day. Peace.